Hello folks, it's Gordon here. I hope all is well with you. Now, this video is going to be the first of two videos talking about things that I don't like in football, using women's football as a jokey introduction to things I don't like in men's football. But instead, I'm doing a video about women's football that is not jokey. Spain won the Women's World Cup last weekend. You may have watched it, beat England 1-0 in the final. Now, the president of the Spanish FA, Luis Rubiales, grabbed his crotch up in the stands in celebration at Spain winning, standing next to the Queen of Spain and her teenage daughter. That, however, has been eclipsed by what happened afterwards, because he was down on the pitch on the rostrum as all the players came up and received their medals in the World Cup. And as each of the players came up, he hugged them all tightly and kissed them all on the cheek. And then one of the players, Jenny Hermoso, he went on to kiss on the mouth. And it immediately got social media up in uproar, saying, this is unacceptable. She didn't look happy about it. She was unaware. It was non-consensual. He should be sacked, or he should resign, or he should stand down. Unacceptable, because this is with a background, by the way. I've got to give you a bit of background. 15 players had refused to play for Spain. 15 women players, because of the manager, Jorge Vilda, and his culture around his setup, training methods and other things in the culture, and him personally. They refused to play for Spain. Now, some of them then decided that they would play for Spain again, but weren't selected. The 15, the Spanish 15 players. You can look it up, it's all over Google. That's the background, and it was mentioned time and time again throughout the coverage of the World Cup because it was a big deal. So yeah, this kiss from the president of the FA on Jenny Hermoso, and after lots of clamour for a few days, he came out with a video apology which could be described as mealy-mouthed. He said, what happened in the heat of the moment. What's done is done. We can all move on. And people said, well, whoa, hang on, that's not enough. It's not enough as an apology. If you kiss a woman on the mouth without her consent and unaware, that is sexual assault. And many walks of life where you would be sacked for that. I think we should put a caveat in that in sport, in football, there's a lot of hugging and kissing going on. In the men's game, let alone the women's game. So the context is needed of the situation. So it's not the same. The context is different, for example, than someone going up to someone else in an office situation and just randomly kissing them on the mouth. The situation is different. The context is different, but is it still? That doesn't mean it isn't sexual assault. Can you see what I'm saying? Do I think it was acceptable? No. Was it done in the heat of the moment? Clearly it was done in the heat of the moment. That doesn't necessarily make it acceptable. Here's the thing. Several days after that, I think the Prime Minister of Spain said it's not good enough, it's not acceptable. FIFA starting to open disciplinary proceedings against him after the clamour. The Spanish FA held an assembly, a general meeting today, and the press were briefed that he was going to announce his resignation. And probably Jorge Vilda, the team manager of the women's team, was going to announce his resignation too. And the press was starting to put this out on Twitter. Rubiales is going to resign today. Rubiales has resigned. Rubiales has gone. But actually, what he did on the stage was say, I'm not going anywhere. He said this was a peck on the cheek. It was consensual. Is a peck on the cheek, or he didn't say peck on the cheek, is a peck, that's all it was. Is a peck enough for me to go after everything I've done for Spanish football? Now, Jenny Hermoso, after the kiss, had said, it wasn't consensual, I didn't like it. And apparently, obviously I don't know the truth to this, but apparently Rubiales and the team manager and lots of figures in Spanish football had begged Jenny Hermoso to appear in the apology video with him. And Rubiales has said to Hermoso, do it for my daughters. Appear in the apology video with me. She refused. So today, on stage, he said, I'm not going anywhere. A peck, is that enough for me to go after everything I've done for Spanish football? I'm not resigning. I'm not resigning. He just said it over and over again. And his tone and his face were cocky, arrogant, belligerent, aggressive, really unpleasant. And I can feel my adrenaline starting now. When I watched the video, I could feel my adrenaline going. Imagine, this is the president of the FA, Spanish FA. Imagine being a woman challenging this man who talked like that in public after what he did in public. Imagine being called into his office with the door closed, trying to challenge him. I've been banging on about women's sport for a long time, at least 20 years. And one of the reasons I say I enjoy women's sport is because of the challenges that they face, the barriers they have to overcome, the obstacles they still face. Because that's the personal development, self-improvement, goal achievement side that still exists. That you can get all that from men's sport, but in women's sport it's amplified because of these barriers and obstacles and challenges they have to face, put in place by men pretty much all the time. Now, it seems strange to say I enjoy women's sport because of that. I wish those obstacles, challenges, barriers, setbacks for women's sport put in place by men weren't there. So it's almost better to say I'm drawn to women's sport because of it. It captivates me. And I consider myself a male ally of women's sport. I try and promote it as much as possible. I try and get my rugby fans to watch women's rugby. I try and get football fans to watch women's football. It's not easy. But this thing today, so what's going to happen now? He says I'm not resigning. Who's going to sack him? He's in charge of the Spanish FA. So who's going to sack him? FIFA so they've instigated disciplinary proceedings. So that will be interesting to see what happens. I've already, after his speech today, seen posts that there's another complaint surfacing about him from previously, where a woman complained about him and he said, oh, she's pregnant, she's having a meltdown, just ignore her. So, you know, this man's attitudes are not hard to fathom out because he just states them publicly, loud and clear. He's not ashamed. He doesn't feel he needs to be ashamed. Doesn't see anything wrong with his attitude. So maybe FIFA will get rid of him, or maybe the politicians will get more involved. Would the Queen of Spain say something? I don't know. And sitting in the room applauding him was the women's team manager and the Spanish men's team manager as well, sitting there applauding him. So I don't know what will happen. Will the men's players start saying, well, we're not going to play if this man is still there? Will all of the Spanish women's players say, none of us, never mind 15 of us, none of us are going to play again for Spain unless this man goes? Will sponsors start to say, this man cannot stay as president of the Spanish FA? I think ultimately his position is, to use the jargon that you hear in politics a lot, untenable. I cannot see how he can stay in that job for long. He thinks he's going to stay there, but I think he's got to get removed by outside forces. Sooner or later, it's going to happen. Staggering. Full-on staggering when I saw that. In this day and age, my jaw was on the floor. And you've got to feel for the Spanish women. They've won the World Cup for the first time. Huge, the pinnacle of Spanish football for women, and it's been dominated by the whole week by a man. Who's in charge of Spanish football? And they will say, well, there we go, with the background of 15 players refusing to play for Spain because of the attitudes and the culture and the setup around the women's national team. Yeah, let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below wherever you want to be seeing this video. Signing off for now and wishing you as ever health and happiness, and I'll speak to you again soon.